Welcome back to the channel, and today we're just going to have a look at this kit that's just turned up. So this is the rather iconic 8-wheeled light reconnaissance vehicle that the Germans used. It came in a number of guises. This is the Puma, so this is the one with the turret. It also had a fixed short barrel 75mm gun on it. There was also an anti-aircraft one, or a light, like a light 2cm cannon on it, and a few other guises. It's a very well-regarded subject for modelling, I must admit. I got obviously a couple extras that comes with the kit, so we'll have a look at those in a minute. That's my kind of suggested things that I'm adding, and we've obviously got a bit of photo etch and some decals. So first off, just having a look through the instructions, we will get ourselves organised. So this is an older kit, quite old actually. However, then we got the jerry cans being put together, and this is where the PE's coming in, and that's the instructions. So let's have a look at the decals first, because it's interesting for a number of reasons. First off, they're very sharply printed. Now I can't tell, I think when I looked this up before, because it says printed by Zanchetti Buccinasco in Italy. I think I looked that up before, and that actually did come back as being cartographed, but it may not be. Either way, they look very much the part. They're absolutely, completely tight carrier film around these crosses. Absolutely as tight as they can get around the numbers as well. Certainly on this 024, that's all, there is no like block of carrier film. Same here as well. And we've also got the logos that go on the fire extinguisher, which is always a nice thing to add. All those little things do add up, and they start to give you a little bit of extra detail. So that's those. Then we've got the photo etch, which is, as we said, just the clasps, but it adds a bit of detail. It's always interesting to see what Italeri picks to put to add photo etch to. It's always something unusual like this, rather than sort of tool clasps or doing it all over. It looks like it has been upgraded at some point. Presumably not for this release. This may well have been done on other releases, because I think this may even date back to sort of the 70s, the original release. And it's pretty much the only game in town apart from the Dragon kits, but they're rather scarce and expensive when they do turn up. There's just been a re-release of them in the UK as well, but they're sort of starting at £65, and I just don't know if that's a bit too much. Probably isn't, but this one's more like sort of 25, and then with the couple of bits I've added here, brings us up to around 35, 40, which, I don't know, I prefer to bring something up from that level rather than jump in at sort of 65, 70. So, very simple stuff. We've got the parts breakdown there. What's happened in this release is we've got some rubber tyres being added, and photo etch there as well, which has got some like clasps for opening, and mainly the tie downs for the jerry cans on the front. So we've got the way the sort of undercarriage, for want of a better word, this running gear and the chassis, as it were, goes on, and then we've got the 4 wheels going on to the spring suspension units that are joining all of that in, leaf spring joining that in as well. So that's both sides pretty much identical. We've got a basic interior, which in this one you don't actually see anything of unless you've got a hatch open, and this shows you this section up to here is the generic part, and it's basically on the top here they can put anything. They can put the different tops for the 3 different types of vehicle that they produce, and they are all in the catalogue. We've got a couple of things going on here, which are, looks like probably ammo boxes or extra armour or something going on the inside. Then the side fenders or mud guards with the toolboxes joined in as well go on, and that makes all of that up. Then we got the jerry cans being put together, and this is where the PE's coming in, and it's actually all being used there. Yes, it is. So they're quite comprehensive clasps. So instead of being plastic all over, you've got closed or stowed versions that you can bend down like that, or you've got stowed versions, and the clasps are part of that as well. So that's all that the photo etch is used for. And then we go on through, start building up the turret. We've got a 2-piece barrel, which is why I've got a metal barrel. There's a couple of reasons. It's actually not quite long enough. and if you can chuck a metal barrel at something at any time, it always improves it. Then we've got the top plate going on, which turns us into this version, and then the turret locks in, and we're done. So we've got a couple of, we've got 4 actually, marking options. 3 camo and 1 which is a training unit, just in an overall Dunkelgelb. So that's a nice option if you're not into painting or you just want to do a simple scheme. We've got that, and this is actually quite nice because it's got some of the sort of stencil data that goes onto these, which is always adds to a bit of interest as well. So we've got unknown unit on the Western Front, 1944, and that quite nice kind of stenciled marking there with the 432. Then we've got Panzer Aufklärung, or is that Abteilung 20, 20th Panzer Division, Germany, 1945 in May. So that one must have got absolutely hammered. And then we've got another one here, is Germany Summer, 1944. And then this one's Germany Spring, 1944. So nice interesting vehicle, as I say. It's rather unique looking. That's a nice touch. Let's have a look at what I've got first. So first off, it's an RB barrel, and these are fantastic. This is about a mil or 2 longer, and it's got a, but it's much more precise. You've got a little bit of photo etch. You've got a rear and a sort of backing plate to this, and then a screwing nut which goes on there and links these two together, which is why there's a little indent, because there's a kind of locking nut that fastens on the back here, and then we've got the end as well that gets glued on, which is there, and it sort of slips into a bevel. And then we've got these parts on this photo etch fret. They just make up the center, so you sort of fill them out inside. All seems a bit fiddly, but it's not. It's very straightforward. So you want to keep all those bits, and there's nothing quite like a machined gun barrel. They do get quite expensive, unfortunately, at the minute. For availability, it tends to be most things is just the Aber gun barrels, which are far superior and absolutely brilliant, but they're sort of double the price of the RB ones, and there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of availability for the RB barrels in the UK currently. So I'm trying to pick them up when I can. And then the Aber photo etch set, which is what I mentioned. It's quite an old set actually. Is it? I don't think it's dated. Yes, it is. 1996. So there you go. Pretty much when they started. This is one of their earlier ones, number 26. So we're just going through the sort of back catalogue that was already around. If you know photo etch, if you know Eduard, then if you think of Aber being a more intense version, really. If you do sort of German vehicles, if you get an Eduard set, for instance, it's usually would have sort of the tool clamps and that sort of thing would just be folded around. Then they'd look the part, whereas for Aber, if you're doing them, or Aber, they're workable. So it's that sort of thing. And it's something I used to always get when I was sort of just starting out, sort of 13, 14. As soon as I got my first set of photo etch, every model I bought, you know, it was metal tracks, metal gun barrel, photo etch. Never painted them, never finished them, but always did it. So I got quite used to doing photo etch from an early age. It's always nice to get a sheet like this off of these guys. We're provided with a lovely way of showing this, the black backing. So there you go. Now the main features in this are, as always, the tool clamps, which are here. So with 3 parts, you sort of clamp them in, then they lock in. You've obviously got some shovels as well. You've got the mounts for the smoke launchers on the side of the turret. You've got also some internals for periscopes all around here. You sort of pick and choose. It can be a bit daunting. I mean, the thing with these sets is they're around sort of £10–12, and you don't need anything else, and you can pick and choose. The main point here, so this is a repeat of what we get given. These are the clasps that go around the jerry cans on the front. We've also got replacement hinges here as well for some doors, and they're the sort of thing I don't tend to use, but they are workable. The main point, as I was saying, is here is all of this, which are on the back of the vehicle. There's some vents that are quite noticeable and they're open, and that is how you replace them. And it's this affair here, because these are all moulded sort of just in one section and they're not see-through, and it's rather an important aspect of this vehicle. This is where the engine bay is, cooling vents. So there you can see it's quite comprehensive, and it always looks quite daunting, but if you've got something like this, again shows my age of doing this. This was only around for a few years. This is the original etch mate I got out of a Tammy Model Magazine International advert, I think, or for Hysterex Asian. There's obviously lots of these around now. And yes, that's the Mission models before they made paint. And if you've got this, something like this, you should be able to do all of these bends without any issue, to be honest. It really shouldn't be a problem. It's simple stuff, doing it logically, selecting the long slides, so you can lift this up and swap it around, or selecting the shorter sides, and then you can get these folds like this one here, which is quite a complex one, quite a fine one, sorry. Once it's in, sort of on this side, just slide it in and you can get a nice even bend all along there. And you just kind of work your way through this rather daunting imagery here, and you'll be ready to go. Other things on here that's showing is obviously the smaller bits. So a lot of this is actually all to do with the vision ports, so if you're not going to open them, you don't need to add it, that sort of thing. This here is obviously for the jerry cans, so having one of those missing adds a lot of interest. Obviously building up here by just reworking the kit part is a bit more of an accurate looking fire extinguisher. Same with a jack, the spade, clasps on the side of some of these boxes, and the tool clamps as well as some wiring and for the horn and lights, and a grill and a few sort of bits and bobs all the way around here. Just adds to the interest. So like I said, it can seem daunting, but you can use what you want from it really, and just pick and choose. So it shouldn't be too bad. And if you want to try some photo etch, Edward is generally the more user friendly, but ABBA really sort of lifts the bar. And although it looks daunting initially, we'll have a look at it in a later video on working with some photo etch. And it is, I personally think, something that anyone can try. Now, as I was saying, the age of this kit does show up a little bit, so you've got to bear that in mind. But it has been improved and cleaned up, so there shouldn't be flash or anything like that. Italieri's quite good at that. I'm not really sure how they go about it, but whatever they're doing, it's certainly working. We get a little extra sprue in here as well, so this is some of their more improved tools. So as I was saying about the tool brackets, the one thing is that you can see through them, so that's already done there. And we've got some stamping kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, sort of maker's mark stamped into the jerry cans as well. So it's just a newer sprue that's been tooled more recently, and they've added that in with a better jack. So like I say, you can have a look along this and decide whether actually it's close enough. So is it worth the effort of going through and correcting it? And for some of this, it probably isn't. So that's always good to have, and that wasn't obviously in the originals. But nothing spectacular there, that's just a generic sprue. So now we're into the kind of main event. You can see here where it's showing its age a little bit, so all of these cooling vents, they really do cry out to be replaced. Just to be able to see the finesse down there. I mean, once you've sprayed it up black, you're not going to actually see anything in there, but it just shows a little bit more finesse, and all of this would be a lot finer. So what you would get, you actually clear all of this off, totally remove this and get a cutout section there and here, all this raised detail, and then put in your etched brass version if you were going to do that. And the one piece of advice I would say is don't actually cut this off until you're happy with the photo etch part that you've made, because once this is gone, if you mess up the photo etch, well, you're stuck then with a bloody great hole. So just think about that sort of thing when you're using photo-etch for the first time. We've got reasonably okay panel lines around here. It's one thing I've noticed with these older Italeri kits is like there, you see where it's got the cutout for the door, it's rather thick, but I think you can get away with that with some clever painting. And here, which is rather prominent, I'm actually quite impressed with that. That's fine. That's just on the sort of extreme end of how deep you'd want your panel lines to be. And everything else is holding up pretty well, as it always does. It's always remarkable just how good these older kits are. Certainly Italeri, they had quite a bit of finesse about them, and there's no real soft details there. It's all looking very nice. And the next sprue is showing us the wheel hubs and pretty much all of the makeup for the chassis and suspension and the finer details with steering wheels, the actual plastic versions of the holders for the jerry cans, the jerry can handles, spare wheel, which I don't think is actually used in this one. And that's about it. Now, it's interesting to say that when this was first released, this is the wheels that we had. So they've gone back and retooled this. This section here is new, and you can see where they've got a ridge where the sprue joins. So they've cleared this out of the mould and put a new tooled section in. And that's the bit I'm talking about that I always find quite interesting. And as well as that, they've gone and cleaned up the mould, because the wheels used to be these two-parters like this, but now they're like this, which I was very happy about. And I've got one quite small concern. When I got these, I was looking at it, and that writing I just find is a little bit heavy. So I'm going to try and sand that down. It's nice to have all of that stamped around there, but it is quite large lettering, and I need to look at some reference to see if it was anything like that. And if it was, then we'll leave it on and we'll do a bit of dry brushing and that sort of thing, and dust effects, and rub it back, and you'll see it. But if it is, as I suspect, a little bit heavy, I might just try and sand that back a little bit. We've got one seam running around, which is easy to get rid of now that you've got these sort of buffable sanding sticks. Something like this, you can just get around it very easily, and the tread pattern is really quite good. Much better than this sort of two-part that we used to have, which is rather basic. So we've got 9 of these tyres, which means that the spare's catered for as well. We've got the spare here, and it just slots on there and then goes on the back of the vehicle. All very impressive. Again, cleanly moulded, as I was saying, and it's been improved. And lastly, we have the turret with the gun barrel. So I'll just get this metal gun barrel out so we can just check how it's going to fit, like that. And you can see actually the length is not too bad, because the muzzle brake's going on. It's actually going to be about the same, so the length isn't that bad at all. The one thing that's lacking on this, which obviously shows its age, is there's not any weld seams. There's the kind of area where they'd be, but you'd have to add them yourself, which is simple enough. There's a number of techniques that you can go about doing that. You've got an MG34 or 42, which presumably should be the normal one, like it is there. You've got those grenade launchers up here as well, or it might be, sorry, there's be smoke launchers from the side of the turret. Small aerial back here, pre-molded, and there's actually a little gun breech as well, so all very good. So there we are. That is the Italeri Puma with a few little extras. So that's a build I'll have, on the go at some point. I'll certainly bring it to the channel when I do. Something interesting, worth checking out, and it's a nice release to have back in. If you want to have a go at some simple techniques as far as getting your sort of build, practicing your building of older kits, maybe getting those vinyl tyres sorted out, and adding some weld beads, bit of cast texture, and generally trying to lift a model which is reasonably inexpensive, maybe throwing a bit of etch at it. You can't go far wrong with this one, so it's well worth checking out. Nice to have back in the catalogue and available on the shelves, and I'm really pleased to have picked one up. So there we go, that's my thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you in the next video.